Thank you, Deputy Speaker. President Eisenhower, in his final speech as President to the people of the United States, warned of the potential danger of burgeoning and unfettered power of what he termed the military-industrial complex. He stated, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced powers exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defence with our peaceful methods and goals so that security and liberty may prosper together." Unfortunately, we see this unwarranted and dangerous influence of the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about in evidence today. There are forces at work that let convenience, pride and unwise loyalty override the safety of our nation and its allies. Take the Joint Strike Fighter JSF or F-35. On Tuesday, 3 June, in Senate estimates, the Chief of Air Force was asked about a statement by United States Air Force Head of Air Combat Command, General Michael Hostage, that, and I quote, "If I don't keep that F-22 fleet viable, the F-35 fleet, frankly, will be irrelevant. The F-35 is not built as an air superiority platform. It needs the F-22. Chief of Air Force stated that he did not know the context, so would take the question on notice. On Friday, 6 June, in response to a question that would appear to have been a Dorothy Dixer, the Chief of Air Force had a statement appearing to put the quote in context. The clarification did not change the sentiment originally expressed. Indeed, it couldn't, because the only options you have with the original statement was that General Hostage was deliberately not telling the truth, was incompetent, or that he was indeed telling the truth. I believe he was telling the truth. What is concerning is the obvious pressure that has been brought to bear to ensure that Lockheed Martin, the Joint Strike Fighter manufacturer, was not negatively impacted in terms of potential sales to Australia. This pressure is abundantly clear from the tone of Hostage's clarification, but still makes clear that the JSF is not adequate against a near-peer threat on their own turf with a dense and highly capable integrated air defence system. This is exactly what Eisenhower warned about, and we now have senior officers in Australia and the US effectively acting as salesmen for huge multinational defence conglomerates. This is not in the best interests of either nation's citizens. Problematically for Lockheed Martin and Defence, General Hostage has further belled the cat on JSF capability or lack thereof. He has stated recently, "The problem is, with a lack of F-22s, I'm going to have to use F-35s in the air superiority role in the early phases as well, which is another reason why I need all 1,763. I'm going to have some F-35s doing air superiority, some doing those in those early phases of persistent attack, opening the holes, and again, the F-35 is not compelling unless it's there in numbers." He goes further, "Because it can't turn and run away, it's got to have the support of other F-35s. So I'm going to need 8 F-35s to go after a target that I might only need 2 Raptors to go after. So a 4-to-1 ratio of JSFs to F-22 Raptors is needed in the air superiority role. This clearly demonstrates that the JSF is not an air superiority fighter." I was trying to remember where I had heard something similar to General Hostage's statement, "because it can't turn and run away." Then it came to me. I recalled the RAND study, Air Combat Past, Present and Future, that I made public a number of years ago. And it had a slide that Lockheed Martin took particular exception to. In that slide, the statement was made that the JSF was double inferior to threat fighters and that it, quote, can't turn, can't climb, can't run. That slide, and the exception that Lockheed Martin took to it, resulted in RAND firing Dr. John Stillian, a very capable analyst and previous combat aviator who co-wrote that report. I understand Lockheed Martin was dismayed with that statement in the RAND document. They certainly pulled out all the stops to negate that statement. Lockheed Martin have also misled on aeropropulsive performance of the JSF, saying it is similar to a combat-loaded F-16. This is blatantly untrue, and when I pushed this point with the Chief of Air Force in our committee inquiry into the Defence Annual Report, he did not persist in equating the aeropropulsive performance of the F-16 with the JSF. He clearly now doesn't dispute what I said in terms of the JSF's aeropropulsive performance not even matching a Vietnam-era combat-loaded F-4 Phantom in sustained turn or acceleration, never mind an F-16. And yes, I do have the flight manuals of the F-4 Phantom and the F-16 where the charts prove this point, and I challenge anyone to prove me incorrect on this. The simple fact is, on pretty much everything JSF that is not classified, unaligned experts have proved to be correct, where Lockheed Martin and Defence's statements have proven incorrect. Take cost, where Defence and Lockheed Martin were assuring us that each JSF would cost considerably less than $100 million each. In fact, the price is well over $180 million each, pretty much line ball with what independent experts at Air Power Australia said. Take schedule. Air Power Australia said it would be years late, while Defence and Lockheed Martin assured the Parliament it would achieve initial operational capability in 2013. I don't see any combat-ready JSFs anywhere on the planet, never mind in squadron service in Australia. With aeropropulsive performance, Air Power Australia was absolutely on the money, where Lockheed Martin and Defence were assuring Parliament it would at least meet its turn and acceleration performance. Lockheed Martin was incorrect despite having access to all the wind tunnel and other critical data. Yet both Lockheed Martin and Defence have the audacity to denigrate those outside experts who have been correct on the publicly verifiable data points. They criticise these outside experts, calling them commentators, etc., where Defence and Lockheed Martin have been proven wrong at every non-classified turn. Yet they say, trust us. It is the secret data that is critical. How can we trust when on any objective outside test they have failed? How were outside experts without access to the detailed data that Lockheed Martin and Defence have able to get it right? Where was the due diligence by Defence? They should have been sceptical, testing the evidence, being objective, yet they simply repeated the line put out by Lockheed Martin. Hence my concern going back half a century to President Eisenhower. The simple fact is Lockheed Martin and the military-industrial complex may be selling the US, Australia and its allies a pup, but nations that may not be friendly to us are not buying the pitch. Defence and Lockheed Martin argue that so many customers buying the JSF can't be wrong. There are numerous times that incorrect decisions have been made in the past, such as when 3 US services purchased the F-4 Phantom without a gun, as dogfights were deemed obsolete and it was all going to be air-to-air missiles. Sounds very familiar to those, similar to those arguments supporting the JSF, but Vietnam proved the fallacy of that argument. In fact, the end of dogfighting has been suggested for more than half the history of air combat. The reality, when fighting peer threats, has always come back to bite. The other fact is that most JSF purchasers have other aircraft they will use for the air superiority role. Potential threat nations are objectively testing the evidence and have come to a very different conclusion about the fundamentals to us. Noted senior Senate Armed Services Committee member and presidential candidate, Senator John McCain, believes the JSF is a great national scandal and worse than a disgrace. He is qualified to comment, having flown F-4 Phantoms in Vietnam. Given our budget emergency, I echo the venerable senator's words. It is a time to end the madness, and it is time to scrap the JSF.
Order.